Is getting into an Ivy League school worth it? After going through the grueling application process, over 2.5 years at Harvard and still counting, and now building my college admissions business, I've been asked this question hundreds of times. The answer isn't as simple as yes or no, and it's definitely not what most people expect. In this video, I'm pulling back the curtain on the real Ivy League experience, the good, the bad, and everything in between. I'll share what no one told me before I applied, what I wish I'd known, and if I'd do it all over again. My journey might surprise you, but I promise you that will help you decide if an Ivy League education is worth pursuing for you. Okay, I'm gonna be real for a second. I want to take you back into the fall of my senior year. It's late at night, maybe 2 or 3 a.m., and I'm sitting there with my eyes burning, laptop open, staring at Common App for probably a couple of hours. I have Google Docs open, and there's a blank cursor just staring at me because I have no idea what to write. I remember feeling completely alone in this process. No one telling me what to do, no one to guide me, and I was the only one that I could rely on. And to be honest, I remember thinking, how am I going to do this by myself? See, I grew up in a part of Texas where Ivy League education was not a thing. Most of my classmates were applying to local state schools or community college if they were applying to college at all. So the idea of going to school out of state, let alone Harvard, felt completely impossible. And my counselors were honestly stretched very thin because they were trying to help over 800 students in my class. So I remember having to figure it out all on my own. I was Googling things like, what exactly is Common App? How do I write a personal statement? And how do I apply for financial aid? I didn't have a private college counselor, and I didn't have anyone else in my family who had gone through the process. If you guys know a little bit about me, you know that my mother passed away whenever I was 9 years old from cancer, and so I was raised by a single immigrant father who had no idea how the US college admission system worked. So I was left figuring it out on my own, and my dad, he didn't know what an Ivy League application was, but he knew that Harvard was a big deal, so if I got in, it would completely change both my life and that of my family's. And honestly, at that time during senior year, my home life was actually an emotional turmoil. I'm not going to go too much into the details because it is a little bit personal, but my home environment wasn't exactly the place where I could come home, relax, and focus on my applications. My family was dealing with high medical bills, a lot of stress coming from every single direction, and at the same time, I was still trying to balance keeping up with my grades, my social life, and all of my extracurriculars that I was involved in at school. I knew that I was a smart kid and the one that my teachers expected to do something big, but honestly, in the inside, I was terrified. I felt like my family's future laid on my shoulders, and the fear of failure just made me so sick. I remember waking up every morning thinking, what if I don't get anywhere? What if I let people down, both my family and my friends? And what if I worked this hard all for nothing? But I think what was even worse than all of that was probably the loneliness, because none of my classmates were applying to schools like Harvard, so I had no one to really talk through the process with. No one was pulling all-nighters trying to write their essays, and no one was trying to search up what's the difference between early action and early decision. I had no clue how to write my personal statement, no idea what schools were looking for, and honestly, no blueprint. But what happened was whenever I sat down to write, I started to realize that applying for college wasn't just about filling forms and getting achievements. It actually forced me to reflect on who I was. So I wrote about my mom and her battle with cancer and how losing her shaped me. I wrote about my father's physical and emotional absence and the resilience I had to build to keep together my home life. But I also wrote about hope and how despite everything, I refused to let my circumstances define me. And I'll be honest, I doubted myself the entire time. Even after I submitted my application, I was convinced that I wasn't getting in, that my essays weren't good enough, and that Harvard was way too out of reach for a girl from a public school in Texas who had no connections, no one paving the way for her, and no idea how exactly college admissions even works. But then decision day came. I remember logging into the portal and my heart was pounding so hard that it was beating out of my chest. But whenever I opened up my decision, I saw an acceptance letter. And in that moment, all of the sleepless nights, the stress, the work that I put in, it felt like it was worth it. And not just worth it for me, but for my family. I wanted to make my mom proud. So was the process hard? Yes. Was it exhausting? Absolutely. But would I do it again? In a heartbeat. Because this wasn't just about getting into Harvard, it it was proving to myself that I was capable. I could set a goal, work relentlessly for it, and make it happen, even if I had every single odd stacked against me. And that's what I want for you. I know this process is overwhelming. I know it feels impossible, but please hear me whenever I say this, that you are not alone. If you are sitting there feeling lost, feeling like you have no resources, and feeling like no one understands, I do. I had to teach myself every single part of this process from scratch, and if I could do it, you can too. Because at the end of the day, it's not about being perfect, and it's not about coming from the right background. It's about how hard you want to fight for it, and I can be there with you every step of the way. And trust me, if you go all in, if you push through the fear, and if you refuse to let doubt win, you will come out stronger, and that is worth everything. Now, I want to go ahead and talk about my journey at Harvard. Harvard was honestly a lot, in both the best and most overwhelming way possible. I went in with so many expectations. I thought it was going to be brutally competitive, that if I didn't stay up all night in the libraries, studying 24/7 and locking in, I would fall behind. I thought it was going to be the kind of place where everyone had it all figured out, where they were walking in with polished resumes, family connections, and a master plan for their future. And then I got there. And within the first week, I realized how much I didn't know. For one, the culture shock was pretty real. Coming from Texas, where life is a little bit slower, where people would sit and talk for hours without thinking about what is 5 steps ahead, stepping into Harvard was like being thrown into another universe. People talk differently, and there were little phrases, acronyms, and terms that I had never heard of in my entire life. So, for example, I was never termed figly. I never heard of venture capital, investment banking, consulting, PSETs, office hours. These are all terms that I did not know of. And I remember that first week, I was just sitting there in the dining room, just nodding my head and pretending like I knew what everyone was talking about. But then the second I got back to my dorm, I would be Googling everything. Like, what do you mean people have been preparing for Goldman Sachs internships since high school? What do you mean that consulting firms literally fly people out to San Francisco and New York for networking events? And why did everyone already seem like they knew exactly what they wanted to do? Meanwhile, I was honestly just trying to survive my first math PSET. This is short for problem set at Harvard, which is essentially our homework. So the academic adjustment, honestly, it was a little bit hard. Back in high school, I was more used to being the smart kid. I didn't have to go to a bunch of office hours. And while learning wasn't the easiest for me, I knew that if I just focused a little bit, I could definitely get it over time. And then I'm at Harvard, and suddenly I'm sitting in a math class where everyone is solving problems in their head, and I'm still trying to figure out what the question is even asking. I remember getting my first PSET and thinking, okay, I'll just do exactly what I learned in high school whenever it comes to studying. And honestly, within 10 minutes, I was questioning every single life decision I had made up to that point. So yes, the academically rigorous school is academically rigorous, but what I didn't expect was how supportive people are here. The people I met here are genuinely some of the most down-to-earth, authentic, kind, and supportive people I've ever come across. I remember the first time I pulled up to office hours, and I was thinking, this is so embarrassing that I'm here because I should be able to figure all of this out on my own. But then I realized literally everyone goes to office hours. It is just a part of how people learn here. We collaborate. So very quickly, I realized that no one was doing this alone. Within my first semester at Harvard, I had already landed a lab internship at Mass General Hospital, not because I had connections, but because people were willing to help me. I had professors who actually wanted me to succeed, classmates who would sit down with me for several hours explaining concepts, and mentors who made sure I was getting the support that I needed. And my friends here that I made, honestly, I have no words for how thankful I am for them. Oh, let me not get emotional, but they have honestly been the most genuine, kind-hearted people I have ever met, and I would not be here if it weren't for them. They inspire me every single day, and they have taught me what family means and what it means to receive and both give unconditional love. I didn't think I would be able to meet people where I could be my full, unfiltered self, but then I met the people here. And the professors and teaching fellows here are honestly unreal. The level of support you get is something I had never expected. So I remember my very first teaching fellow in my chemistry class, shout out to Joe Gonzalez, he was with me in every corner. I remember that adjusting to Harvard was hard for me both socially and academically, but Joe would send me several emails supporting me, reaffirming that I belonged here, and just cheering me on every step of the way, and that is something that I will never forget. That kind of reassurance and that kind of human support, that meant everything. and I don't think I would have been able to achieve all of the things I have if it weren't for teaching fellows and staff like him. And then there's the city of Cambridge and Boston itself, and I may be biased, but honestly, I think it is absolutely beautiful. You don't get bored here, ever. There is always something happening. One day, you're just walking through the yard and Bill Gates is just casually giving a guest lecture. The next, you're at some random event eating pizza, and suddenly you're in a conversation with a Nobel Prize winner. It is actually ridiculous how many talented people are here, and I genuinely believe that if you surround yourself and put yourself in a place where luck is going to find you, you are on the path to success. And because Cambridge and Boston is a very walkable city, I love exploring the town here. I go on little coffee shop runs. I love getting food with my friends in Chinatown. I love going shopping at Prudential Center and also Newbury Street as well. And then let me not forget about the classes, because they can absolutely change the way you think, especially the general education classes. I have taken so many courses that made me rethink everything: the world, myself, my role in the world, and how I should be viewing my relationships with other people. I genuinely think that classes like those have made me see things in a completely different light. The discussions, the debates, the constant push to think critically about things, it is next level. So was it challenging? Absolutely. And was it overwhelming at times? For sure. But honestly, that's how it is at every single school. So was it all worth it? Every second of it. Because Harvard isn't just about academics or prestige or making it. It was, and it's still about growth. It was about stepping into a world that once felt impossible and realizing, no, I actually do belong here. It's about learning, struggling, finding my people, and proving to myself that I could do this. And so if I could do it all over again, I wouldn't change a thing. One thing I realized about my Harvard education is that the real value isn't just in the classes or the diploma. It's in the people, the access, and the mindset shifts that just happen whenever you are in this space. Before I got here, I thought that an Ivy League degree was like the golden ticket to success. That once you had Harvard on your resume, it would automatically open doors. But that's one of the biggest misconceptions I've seen. It's actually not the name that gets you places, it's what you do with the opportunities that come with it. So whenever I think about what my Harvard education will mean for me in the long run, I know that it's just not about my degree. It's about the relationships I'm building, the network I'm cultivating, and the experiences I'm stacking up that will open so many doors in the future. So the access and opportunities I've gotten here is actually insane, and it was all because I was in the right room. So I was able to get featured in Forbes, Yahoo, Microsoft, and Business Insider simply because I was connecting with entrepreneurs and people who saw value in my story. I was able to receive the opportunity to get flown out to San Francisco to meet the ex-CEO of Google, and this wouldn't have happened if I didn't intentionally surround myself with high-level visionaries and entrepreneurs. I was even able to secure a medical shadowing opportunity at Mass General Hospital without even having to go through a single application. Because once you're in the Harvard ecosystem, people trust that you're willing to put in the work and the passion. I've even had direct conversations with admission officers at Ivy League schools and even professors at Harvard's Graduate School of Education who would invite me to sit in and talk on their lectures. And just by talking to like-minded people and just being social and surrounding myself with friends that share the same passions as I do, last semester I was actually even flown out to Oregon through a fully funded Nike-sponsored retreat for changemakers, visionaries, and young founders. And being in this room with 60 invited people from across the nation, I didn't realize how much I had to learn from them. They weren't just successful people, but they were people that were genuinely shaping industries, driving innovation, and making change in ways that society hasn't even seen before. I was sitting at dinner talking to Christopher Payne, the COO of DoorDash, who broke down his exact strategies for building billion-dollar companies like Amazon and Microsoft. I was talking to the person who made the iMovie app for Apple and who even exited a company for $500 million. I even talked to senior managers at Amazon and CEO of companies that were bought by Verizon. And they were giving me educational knowledge that I would not have acquired anywhere else if it weren't for the connections and the space that Harvard cultivated for me. So what I've learned firsthand is that the Harvard name doesn't actually guarantee success, but you'll be successful if you're the type of person who takes advantage of the access that the Harvard name gives. So I've seen my own friends and mentors go off and start companies that have raised millions of dollars in venture capital. My friends have been able to acquire high-level positions at Google, Meta, Goldman Sachs, not because of the degree itself, but because of the relationships they've built here. I've even seen my own friends pivot into completely different careers. I've seen pre-meds become tech founders, engineers become policy leaders, and people jump into industries that they've never even considered before. So one thing I noticed is that the Ivy League advantage isn't about acquiring a job, it's about being in rooms where jobs aren't even publicly listed. Because what I noticed is that the best opportunities here don't come from applying, but it's actually from people pulling you in. I've seen tons of Harvard graduates skip the traditional hiring process simply because their professor, friend, or mentor made a call for them. Or maybe they worked on a research project that eventually led to a full-time offer. And it's literally all because someone in their network said, hey, I know the perfect person for this role. And that is the real power of an Ivy League education. It's not about what you know, it's really about who knows you. So a lot of people assume that once you make it into Harvard, you've made it in life. That everything from there is smooth sailing. But the truth is that no one hands you everything. Sure, you do get access to top-tier companies, but you also need to actively put in the work to get yourself in the right places, build meaningful relationships, and prove that you have value. So right now, I'm not just going to class and doing homework. I'm building a network and community of people who will be leading industries, running companies, and shaping the future. Every conversation I have, every event I attend, every time I put myself out there, it is compounding into something bigger. I've already been able to have one-on-one conversations with neuroscientists and biologists simply because I was curious about learning more. I've been able to attend exclusive guest lectures at Harvard Medical School and Graduate School of Education simply because I sent an email and I put myself in relationships with people. I've even been able to attend exclusive lectures at the Graduate School of Education and also the medical school simply because of invitations from professors that I built relationships with. And I've even been able to fly out to places like Thailand and Mexico to learn from top-level industry leaders. And I know that 10, 20, 30 years from now, the people I'm meeting now will be CEOs of major companies, the next generation of venture capitalists, policymakers, and researchers, and people leading innovation in medicine, tech, and social impact. And because we've built these relationships early, and because we've had shared experiences, these connections will last for life. So I don't see my Harvard education as just taking 4 classes a semester. I see it as a launchpad. I see it as a place that's accelerating my growth, surrounding me with top-tier thinkers, and exposing me to opportunities that I would have never had access to otherwise. So the degree isn't the finish line, it is the starting point. It's in the people I've met, the experiences I've had, and the mindset shifts I've been able to develop. So when people ask, is an Ivy League education worth it? Here's my answer. If you know how to take advantage of it, absolutely. So is getting into an Ivy League school worth it? For me, it was, but not for the reasons I expected when I first applied. The process is challenging, the experience is intense, and the aftermath isn't always what people imagine. But if you're willing to embrace the journey, both the highs and lows, an Ivy League education can transform your life in profound ways. If you're considering this path and want guidance through the application process, click the link in my description to learn more about my Ultimate Ivy League Guide program. I designed it specifically to help you navigate the challenges I faced while maximizing the opportunities that await. The truth is, an Ivy League education isn't for everyone, but if it's right for you, it could be one of the most worthwhile journeys you'll take in your entire life. I'm here to help you figure all that out, so if you're interested, click the link in the description and I'll see you in the next video.